with Trump's approach, he would want to have a very strong relationship with Britain.
So Donald Trump, he shocked many by winning the election, but what does a Trump America mean for the markets?
I think it's basically a good outcome, subject to all the uncertainties at this stage in the game where he hasn't actually taken office. The markets have gone up. I think the reason it's looking promising is, we have been living in a world which was dominated by monetary policy, where we had fiscal hawks blocking any attempt to, do public sector investment, have complementary policies. I think we now have a higher probability of both a fiscal stimulus via infrastructure and tax cuts, and probably some structural reform, maybe tax reform, maybe some deregulation, all of which are front and center in what Trump says he intends to do in his first 100 days. So I think the markets are thinking maybe growth will come up, maybe inflation will come up, etc. So that's the most likely direction of change at this point.
Trump said that he will tear up the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement on the first day in office. What does this mean for America and the other countries involved?
Well, he has said that. I mean, Clinton also was unenthusiastic about the TPP. I think, most people viewed the TPP on the American side as dead. Now, what the other partners to the agreement do is a kind of different question. They may stick with it, but I think it's unlikely without American participation. In the meantime, I think the Chinese are absolutely happy about this because it was viewed in China and more broadly as an attempt to sort of circumscribe China and force them into a different way of interacting with the world in trade and finance. China has stepped into the vacuum already. At the APEC meetings, President Xi Jinping said he was going to take the lead in trying to organize a fully inclusive Asia free trade area. So that's part of the response. But on the Trump side, I think it's going to be replaced with a whole set of bilaterally negotiated free and fair trade agreements, as he sees it, where he and his administration represent American interests reasonably aggressively, but they expect the other side to represent their interests aggressively, and they'll work to find mutually beneficial agreements. And I think he'll be very focused in those agreements on the effect on jobs in America. It's an important part of his electoral base and how he got elected and won the election.
When will interest rates go up in America? Will there be a rate hike in December?
I'm quite confident there'll be a rate hike in December. I thought that was it's essentially right, independent of the electoral outcome. But I think it's even more sure now because we've had an uptick in expected inflation, an uptick in bond yields, and so on. That doesn't mean the Fed is going to try to cut this all off at the pass, but frankly, the Fed's credibility, given the configuration of the economy, at this point is probably pretty heavily dependent on having at least, some rate hike in December. And the expectation used to be a pretty modest set of rate hikes in 2017. I think the expectations have been in view of the proposed policies of the incoming president-elect. Probably people have increased their estimate of the pace of interest rate rises in the American economy, as long as it doesn't damage the improvement in performance in the economy, which I think it won't. It's probably pretty healthy. I mean, it's nice to have the prospect of entering a world in which you can actually earn a return on a fixed income investment. So it's good. I think it's good for savers. It's good for investors. It's a positive change.
Going back to the Trans-Pacific Partnership Agreement, will there be more chance for the UK to get a better trade deal with America?
I think so. It's entirely consistent with Trump's approach. He would want to have a very strong relationship with Britain. He would be very receptive, I imagine, to having a good, fulsome, across-the-board trade and investment agreement with Britain. We have very similar systems of sort of governance broadly defined, so that there wouldn't be problematic aspects of that. So I think that would come sooner rather than later.